Hi, everybody. Looks like welcome to the July 21st Tinderbox Meetup. We have a small crew today, but that's fine. Hopefully more people will show up as we go along. Typically, the meeting formats are we go around the room, new people introduce themselves. We talk about any projects, topics that people are working on, and otherwise we would then dig into a theme if we have one. Currently, we don't have a theme, so let's just go, and we don't see anybody new. So let's go around the room and just kind of generally talk about any tools, processes, or things that people want to talk about. So I have one if nobody else has anyone, but what's on your minds today, guys? Any thoughts, Mr. Anderson? You got been working on anything?
Uh, Not particularly. I'm knee deep in. I'm in that sort of worst inflection point. I'm the program chair for a conference, so I'm sort of battling. I'm battling the whole submissions process, which sort of it's one of these things where you ask for sort of, is this documented, and someone points you to a web page that's sort of a minor book length in length, and arguably has the information you want if you could only find it. And so when you ask them, they just give you so anyway. So I'm having, let's say, a full and frank discussion with the publishers at the moment, which is sort of I think breaking through slightly. So I haven't done much tinderboxing. Two things I did notice. So I noticed someone interested. I did see that some posted a quite interesting large Gaudi view, and it did make me think about whether actually links are useful in that. And I posted it on the thread, and I saw your thing about number formatting.
Yeah, and let's talk about that if you don't mind. That would be one thing I want to work through because I thought of doing the dot format method, which we can talk about right now, but in my in the particular use case that I'm working for, that I don't think it works for me, so maybe we can explore with that.
Yeah, we'll just see if it sounds though nobody's. I don't know if anyone's going to break cover with anything else.
All right, so let me go ahead and here's some text. So let me go ahead and I will share my screen in all of its messiness. And we can talk about that. All right, so here is the kind of idea. So I have let's call this just, I'm calling it list, but let's say I have some text here.
Yep.
Um, right, and specifically my use case is this. Let me see if I can pop it up. Let me stop my sharing screen, and I'll give you the actual live use case of what I'm working on. Not that Tinderbox file, too many files. I've got two that I want to show here. Come on, I'm on Tinderbox. I might need to close some windows here. There we go. Let's do that one. And projects. All right, so here's the real world example of what I'm working on. So what I'm trying to do, and this is more just kind of exploratory thinking at this point,
Yep.
but I'm trying to think about, like, for my business, what kind of, I want to build a rate card for what I have to sell and what I have to do. And as I've been going through that process, so I'm thinking like, working group chairman or, webinar moderation. And then I'm thinking about, like, what are the deliverables? So participate in a 2 hour, 3 hour, 2 to 3 1 hour preparation calls, prepare work promotion, etc. And what I'd like to do is find an operator that says, go find these children and then essentially manipulate them so that it shows up in text as using an expression or something like that, with like like this A B. Actually, I wouldn't do both. It would either
So
be a parenthesis or a period, but
yep.
maybe let's just go parenthesis right now for this example. Right, and then I'd want to have that. I'd want this operator to separate this list, so I could go like this. And it's certainly, and I could see this application being applied into some interesting academic writing too, but I won't go that far. Come on. Computer's acting slow.
So I understand correctly, you want the titles of the child notes.
So I want the titles of the child notes
inserted literally into the dollar text of the parent.
Yes,
with
literally it's
with a
inserted like so.
paragraph prefix.
And then I want to be able to. Then I might want to preface that with a line like the deliverables of this are just plain like that, and then I could either have it go like this, A B C D, or I can have it give me a bullet, list them as individual lines.
Right. The way I to break this out into parts is I build the outer part, which is the bit that takes all the children and just turns them into paragraphs in the parent text. So you're presumably going to hold on to the text that's already there. So you're going to be doing something like dollar text equal plus equals. So add on to the end of it, probably a line break, and then whatever you're getting from the children. Okay.
Okay.
Yep. And think of that in a function, because the other thing you'll do in the function is that you'll pass a parameter into the function saying, oh, and by the way, when you give me back the children, I need them in the following format. And that probably will use another function, because it'll end up being lots of code, because basically you'll have to build something to deal with the many different types of combinations that you are hinting at. In other words, there isn't a magic thing that's going to guess that you want, periods one day and parentheses the other.
Well, then that's why, and let's go ahead just so people can see this.
So there isn't. The point is there isn't. So the I think the starting sort of misassumption, if I can call it that, no, I don't mean that harshly, is that because we see things regularly that are formatted, it creates the notion that there is a rule behind it. And in fact, it will vary a lot. I mean, obviously, if you go to the same publisher or the same, area of discourse, you may see the same thing, but they're generally not formal. I mean, if you look up anything, it's a bit like footnote symbols. Well, actually, it turns out there are 2 or 3 different, rubrics for that. Doesn't matter which at one level, it doesn't matter which you use, except of course the one you use will turn out to be the one that your publisher hates. But apart from that, because that's how nature goes, so it's probably a matter of thinking, okay, well, how many, what formatting, what prefixed number in the looser sense of the word do I want?
Well, let me pause you here, right? Okay, so we talked about that in the thread.
Yeah.
And I kind of gave an example of what I'm looking for, and Mark came back and said use number dot format, and you rightfully pointed out, well, that doesn't let me get A, B, C.
Yeah. And
so
also,
how would I go about getting A, B, C?
Well, you can't use in that method. And I also made the point that it's this thing about, never say never, is that, I'll never have more than 26 children. Well, if you do, you're going to run out of letters and you don't want to start a day again. So, or you can take that as a hard limitation for yourself. But as this isn't really a programming environment where you'd otherwise write a thing said, if you get more than 26 inputs, bail out with an error message, because it's clunky to do that. But if you want, I think there is a way that there certainly would be a command line or something. Well, actually, to be perfectly honest, you could make yourself a lookup list that just starts at say, 1, or if you prefer 0, and says, so, 1 is A, 2 is, you just make yourself basically a little lookup list, a little dictionary. So you can pass through the number. So you're going through a loop. I'm now on item 4. I pass 4 to the relative function, and it passes me back D. Yeah.
Okay.
The point being that what you might want is a series of functions, perhaps 1 for each type that you're going to do, because it sounds as though what you want is something where you can have a different type of numbering styled. So it's not just the number, it's all the guff that goes after it, whether it's a closing parenthesis or a period or, you know, something else. And indeed, you know, a padding space and all this sort of thing. So the heart of it is the number, which will have, you know, which will come out of a sequence, or it might be, you know, lowercase Roman numerals or something. And then there's another bit. So if you break it down, you probably want to, now we have functions, it'd be useful to have a function where if in the particular thing you're doing, so right here, I'm going to want, say, lowercase Roman numerals, you could have a function that goes away and sorts out the Roman numerals using, whether it's using number format or whatever, but you pass it a number, and maybe you might have a sort of another Boolean input that just deals with uppercase or lowercase. So I want, you know, uppercase Roman letters, I want lowercase Roman letters, Roman numbers rather. And you can compartmentalize it that way. So your main thing just is, oh right, I'm going to loop through here. You know, I'll get a list of all the child names. I'll iterate through them, list dot each, and for each item, what I'm going to do is I'm going to work out, and you can find the number in the list, noting that the list number from 0. And you can say, okay, I'm the 0th item, so I want effectively the first value. And you might need to put, you need not to shim in a plus one in there.
No, I'm following you. I think for those that are on may not be. So do we want to just start working through this, or do we want to try something different? And we've had others join on the call since we started. So let me stop sharing screen and see if there are anybody else has any other topics or questions. So Andreas, welcome. We haven't seen you in a while on the call. Do you have anything you're working on or want to talk about? And Bruce, any topics that are of interest to you? Looks like we lulled everybody into complacency too. They all shut off their videos on us. Anybody? Kim? Like, where'd everybody go?
You're up, Michael. Yeah, keep going. You're on a
Okay.
roll.
Yeah, when the faces disappear and we just look at pictures, it's really hard to know, like,
yeah, are we live? Yeah.
What's happening? Yeah.
Yeah. Someone described to me having to do really large university lectures where he'd look at a sort of screen of, you know, a sort of big screen of about 300 sort of black squares with a name in it, you know. He said, I wonder what I'm bothered.
Exactly. Yeah. Where did that human touch part go? It's
well, I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, I tend to leave mine on merely to remind myself I'm actually on the call, as it were. But yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So let's play with this. So let's say we had some text, and in this text, in this note, we wanted to interject these items. Now, if we wanted to do numbers, obviously the numbering element's doable enough. So maybe we start with that function, and then we can convert numbers to letters. Maybe that's the exercise we go through.
Okay. So, sure.
So let's go ahead and we can start, and we might as well start with stamps while we're at it, because it's easier to just do some of the basic stuff. Come on. And we don't necessarily need that. We can keep that text in there. It's fine. Why is my computer is just not responding very fast? Okay. All right. Let me
Clearly an M3 chip is not fast enough.
No, I've got like 200 browser tabs open. Let me go ahead and close my Chrome. Force quit Chrome here. Where is it? All right, hopefully this will speed some stuff up. All right, so Chrome goes away. Okay, so let's go up here. Get a stamp, create a stamp, and let's just do that. We'll do it. And as we talk, as Mark Bernstein often says, we want to kind of do this incrementally, right? So do each step at a time. So the first step we want to do is we want to collect our children.
Yep.
And for the sake of testing and logging, why don't we go ahead and create a note called log?
Mhm.
And that's where we'll stick them. So we'll say text.log equals collect, spell things properly, children name. Okay,
Yep.
so when we do that,
but you probably, what you want to do is you want to put, and you, before that semicolon, just after the close parentheses, put dot format quotes \n.
yeah, but let's
Quotes.
go one step at a time.
Just so basically, it's just
Yeah, I know,
well,
so we do.
your log will be unreadable otherwise. So
Right, no, I understand, but let's do one step at a time. So if we just do that, and we
yeah,
hit apply, you'll see that this got automatically bigger. That jumps text in here. So now what we see is a formatted list coming from Tinderbox. So now, to your point, if we go back here and we say name.
No. Outside the closing parenthesis. So you're chaining on to the end.
I know. Hold on.
Yep.
Remember, my computer is not going very fast. Okay, and the /n is a regex for a line break.
\n is no. Well, it's not a regex. It's sort of, well, it is and isn't, but it's a general. It's basically a way of specifying in string form a non-printed character.
Okay, so then that gives me the line items. And let's assume in terms of the let's create another note here called readme. So we can also, while we're doing this, we're going to collect our assumptions. So one of the assumptions I have is the list is in the order of the children.
Yep.
Right. So I want to manually prioritize where these want to be. So for example, if I do this and I manually put item 3 in front of item 1, I want item 3 to be the top of the list. So if I read,
well, if you run your stamp again, you can see that in the log,
and I'll see that, and you'll see now that item 3 is in the top of the list. So that's one of the assumptions / elements of this that I want.
You could, one of the things you can do, I mean, it's a useful thing to say, is that essentially is to say that, right, I'm going to give myself a constraint whereby I'm going to accept that I get the children in the order I put them in. You could write all sorts of fancy pants stuff to resort it on the fly, but I think you just overcomplicate it for the number of times you actually want to do that. You could always, if push came to shove, you could always just modify the thing to say, okay, well, I've got a list now. But instead of getting the names, I get something like the ID or the path. And then I'd say, right, well, actually, I want to sort them on a value in, my number or something. You can do that. The action code will let you do that. And you could do, you could do it on the fly in this, but I try not to put in, well, it's what's the acronym YAGNI, you ain't going to need it. So the temptation is to try and build everything in from the get-go. And I'd be tempted to not do too much of that until you really, really know that you need it. If nothing else,
Yagi, you ain't going to need it. I like that.
You ain't going to need it. They sort of come out of, they're sort of broadly, I think, out the sort of coding world, various acronyms like that. They're
so in other words, don't over engineer it.
Yeah.
Okay. Take a note here. All right. So now playing with that idea. So I've got my list. And so now what we want to do is preface this list with numerical numbers, one dot, 2 dot, or 1 parenthesis, 2 parentheses. Let's do that first.
Okay. So what you can do is now what you're going to do is I would first of all collect, get the list that comes out of collect and put into a list variable, because we're going to do something to the list before we use it.
Okay.
Yeah. So you might have
go ahead. So let's just incrementally do this. So we can have a file that we can share with people afterwards. So now we're going to create children list. So now rather than dumping that into text log, we're going to dump.
Yeah, you can put that at the bottom because you might want to still log it when you're done, but it's just we've got to do something to the list before we pass it to the log.
We're going to go variable list equals v list. Right.
Yep.
So now we're putting that collection into a list, and we don't need this line break now.
you've got a typo in your type on your first line. Yeah, you got var.
Yeah.
You got there you go. Okay, so we made list variable. So we told Tinderbox we want it to be a list, and we're being explicit because the one thing we don't want to do is, for instance, it might think it's a set and then sort it for it. We don't want it. Right. We know it's going to come in an order and want to stay in that order, so that's important, right? So now we have a list. We can say on the next line we go vlist.each. So we're going to iterate. We're going to loop through the list, doing something to each item in turn. And right, so the list starts at 0, and we want to start at 1. So there are various ways you can do this. You could have a count. You could either sort of say, give me the list. So you could basically you could ask, well, which list item am I? Add 1 to it and use that to set your number. You could, I mean, there are all sorts of ways to do it, but essentially what you want to do is at each, so
before we move on from there, I'm following you, but just for the sake of the education for those that may not be, let's talk about this. So in Tinderbox, when you have lists, it's base 0. So the first item in the list is Tinderbox considers to be 0. The second item in the list, Tinderbox considers to be 1, and that is a coding convention. Like, why is that? Why is that the case? I don't remember, Mark.
Well, it goes. I mean, it really goes back to the early days when everything had to almost be hewn by hand, and so if something doesn't exist, it's a 0. You don't have to make it. So if you're only storing if you're only storing the 1s and not the 0s, there's less to do. Okay. Whereas now, where lots of things we use, there's all sorts of layers of sort of code sit in between.
So let's do the simplest of possible things, which would be add 1 to the item.
Yeah, I'm just looking for.
So I'm assuming we'd want to create a count variable.
Yeah, there we go. I'm just going to put a link in list types. Okay.
Let's say
so put that in the chat. This probably won't be news to most here, but that's just a link to a page that describes the list data type, which is what we're playing with here. And the fact it doesn't do something, and I think in there it mentions, or does it? Okay, I'll put a link to list each as well then, because we would like that. So people following along can do that. So I'll go back to code.
So I would, if I'm not just kind of waiting for it, I would do something like this, and then I would say, and this would be a plus equals.
Yeah.
And then we'd want this, and we'd want to add. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. One thing you can, and if you want to be even more belt break, I mean, so another assumption here that we're going past is we know that the default for any number type attribute
is 0.
Is 0. But you could, if you wanted, you could say, you could declare vcount and say vcount equals 0 before you sort the loop. It's the same thing.
Right.
And obviously, the more you become familiar with these things, the more you need to sort of remind yourself or set that. But that's fine here. So the key thing we're doing here is because we're starting from 0, we increment the counter before we use it. Otherwise, our first item will be called, will be item 0. Okay.
And then the other thing while we're playing with this, what would we call this? What is that? A prefix, postfix? What is that?
It isn't anything. It's just formatting.
Yeah, but what would we call it? So okay, we'll call it string.
Oh,
let's say v format.
You can call it suffix.
Suffix. There you
go.
Right. And then
so
in this case, we'll say suffix is a period like this. So if it's a variable.
I see where you're going. Yeah. So in other words, you just do it the once, and the useful thing there is that it's probably easier to find that if you come back to edit this and someone says, no, I don't want a period, I want a colon. So that's fine. So you go in there and just look for the suffix rather than having to hunt it down inside the loop.
Right. So if I go like this, we now have parentheses, but what did I do wrong here? Oh, 2 pluses, there we go. So now we have parentheses, and if we go back here and change it, we now have periods. Oops. Okay, so that's working. So now, and again, if we didn't want to, and again, we might as well do this. We could say, call this one variable string, the end. And we could say this would be, by default, we'll make it a line break. And we'll call this one. So that way, to our point, you never need to touch this.
Yeah.
In here, if you want to be doing this. So in this case, if I wanted to, okay, so now if I do this, it's still going to be that's going to give me the same result. But if I wanted to change it from a line break to a comma, I now get a comma separated list. All right, so that's good. So now the next stage of this exercise would be, how do we change numbers to letters?
Okay. Right. Well, as sort of discussed at the top of the call, there isn't a mechanism to do that. There isn't a sort of built-in thing in Tinderbox saying, give me the number, and if you attempt to go and ask the command line, it would probably tell you that I think is 32 if my memory serves me correct, right. And then 26 later. I think that's a capital A, and then 26 characters further on, it's lowercase a. That's just how it was done in the original sort of computing code tables and stuff. I would suggest that probably what you do is you make yourself a lookup list, or you make yourself a dictionary. It's the same thing, really. So basically, you're going to have a bit of code, curly brackets, where it'll be a, and in fact, we don't put the keys in quotes, so it's going to be curly brackets, a in quotes, colon, 1, semicolon. So that's your first.
Right. Now, but do we want to take that actually an attribute? So we want a dictionary attribute?
Yeah, and I mean, you can do this all sorts of ways. You could put it into a function. You basically could create the dictionary inside a function. You could store it in a code note as an attribute. Probably to start out with, I would probably put it as an attribute as a sort of code note to start with, because the more you tuck stuff away in functions, the less accessible it is. Now, if you're someone who's from a coding background, that's probably where you go straight away because you understand how all that works. If you're not, it's probably easier to have things where if it all falls to bits, you can go and actually look at the thing you made, check it is what you thought you made, and and make corrections. So what in our TX config, what we actually want to do is so what we'll do is, if in TBX config, if you just make my dictionary. Okay. And in there, we're going to put open quotes, quotes A, close quotes, colon. So that's a key A, colon, value is 1, semicolon. And that's one complete key value pair. And we've only got 4. So we'll do, if we do B in quotes now.
Yeah, for the and when we're done, I'll add all of them in for future reference. For now, we'll just play with the 4.
Yeah, okay. A semicolon. And yeah, exactly. So you're going to have 4 key value pairs.
And why are they in quotes there?
Because my understanding is, well, I don't, probably doesn't matter. But the thing is, the numbers aren't in quotes because, well, they're numbers. And actually, in this case, it doesn't matter. The thing to bear in mind is that the keys are basically literal names. Mm-hmm. And I think if you wanted to have a key called numeral 1, you probably would need to put it in quotes to say to Tinderbox, no, this is actually some text. I know it looks like a number, but it's text. In this case, an A is an A is an A, and it probably won't get confused. But I just tend to do this thing because it makes me think about it. It's a little more typing, but there is less guesswork.
Okay.
That's what it is. So you've now got you've now got that. So what you could do is just make another note or another stamp and just basically say, you know, and dollar text equals my dictionary brackets tbx config. What is the, how do we get the key? I have to check the syntax off the top of my head. It actually, where are we? Dictionary key. Right. So what you'll do is you'll say, so it's my dictionary. Yeah, and then you after at the end of the line, after the closing parenthesis, square bracket.
Okay. All right.
Square bracket, opening square bracket, because we no, why have you got an equal sign there?
Okay.
There you go. Right. So all you've done so far is you said, no, you don't want dollar text. No. So wait. Right. The beginning of the line, what you want is you want to call the attribute called my dictionary in note tbx. No, don't delete that. Just change dollar text to dollar my dictionary. Okay. So at this point, the code so far is saying to Tinderbox, for the attribute my dictionary that is in the note called tbx config, then open the square bracket.
Okay, like that.
Yep. Quotes. A. Close quotes. Close square bracket. Semicolon. Okay. Now go to the beginning of the line and put dollar text equals.
Yeah.
And then if you just run that in any note, it ought to basically make the current note's text.
No.
I wonder if it's because you're calling a root level note. There is some oddity occasionally. If you just take the quotes off tbx config and put a slash in front of it, so basically do it as a bare path. So that should give you, if my...
No.
Let me check my syntax.
I'm wondering if we need the quotes up in the dictionary here. Maybe that's the problem.
No, it shouldn't matter.
I agree, but I'll just try it. Oh, shoot. No, didn't matter.
Okay, I tell you what, take the square brackets off the end in the stamp. Take the whole bit in square brackets out and run the stamp again. So basically saying, just give me the contents of that and see what you get.
Yep.
Okay, right.
Is that a dot at?
In my dictionary, yeah, now put that now put that back, the bit you took out.
The key.
Yep. Now in my dictionary, in the displayed attributes, put a curly bracket at the beginning and a closed curly bracket at the end of that. I don't think this should matter, but it can get confusing, right? And see what we get now. No. Right. The thing is, it should. I would have expected. Well, actually, okay. Just cut. Don't delete. Just cut the square brackets again, and see what we get in text.
Do that.
No. All right. Just delete the last three characters there. That's fine. Now see what you get. Right. Okay. So that's a dictionary object. Because under the notation that was introduced about version 9.5-ish, the curly brackets are saying to me, this is a dictionary. So you should be able to.
So basically, how do we look up a dictionary?
How do you look at it? Right. What you do is, I tell you what, as we're in note tbx config, delete the bit after my dictionary in the stamp. and just put square bracket quotes A.
That's interesting if it's not.
Well, take it one step at a time. Okay, so some reason it's not reading the dictionary, and I don't know why, because that is the syntax for it.
So do we want to look at?
You could try. I mean, well, I tell you what, you can try. This is where it gets very confusing because, and this is why I tend to be verbose with the styling, because we're now at the level where saying, well, this is a problem that I put quotes where I shouldn't do, and I don't know, because this is the problem with not having rules, because it's fine to let you do whatever you want right up until the point where it doesn't work, and now we don't know. So what I probably would do, so if you basically, I'm looking.
So let's just pull up so everyone can see what you're looking at. Let's pull up A2B wrap.
So that's if you look at, yeah, if you click on the action codes, just go to action codes at the top. Yeah, scroll down to dictionary, capital D. Too far. Dictionary. No, at the bottom, very bottom one, dictionary. There you go. Okay, so if you look at the third line of the sort of red text, we're seeing my string equals my dictionary, square brackets, dot. Well, no, not that line. The third line of red text.
Not so they're all a dot.
Yeah. Okay. So the point being, so that's the test we're doing, but we're not getting the right stuff back.
But I'm wondering if all of these. Let's just play with it. Are all of these quotes in here causing a problem? We can.
Well, you can take them out. Yeah, it's very easy. You can just take them out, and I suspect.
Sorry, my computer is
a bit that's not clear at the moment is, since the new list and dictionary notation of curly brackets and square brackets was introduced, it's absolutely not clear as yet, to me, unclear when you see those and when you don't. So you noticed earlier when you logged the list, you got the list back in square brackets, which is Tinderbox saying, I'm giving you a list, not a string with lots of semicolons in. In other words, I think this data is a list. But when you called this, no, you don't want curly brackets. You do not want curly quotes.
I'm just deleting the.
Yeah. So just take the contents. Just take the contents without the curly brackets.
All right. Well, we put them in before, so.
Yeah, but that's only because we couldn't get it to work. So copy that, put that into your value, and now go back and run your last stamp. So this is why I never do live.
There you go. Now that works.
Okay, right, fine. Okay, so what we can now do is we can on that, in that stamp, before that.
Whoops, where did it go?
What happened to the one we know? We want to go back to the dictionary test.
Yeah, I know. I want to create a new one, and I'm going to copy this so we can incrementally change it.
Yeah, well, we're not ready for that yet. We want to go back to, we're still testing the dictionary before we get to it.
Where'd it go? Huh.
Well, not to worry. So this isn't a stamp you're going to, this is a testing stamp, not one you.
I know it is, but it's interesting where it went. I don't know what happened. All right, let's just do it. We'll recreate it. All right, or get whatever that is, and then what was it again? It was text.
Right. If you put dollar text equals dollar my dictionary.
Yeah.
And then open parentheses / tbx config.
Yeah.
Close parentheses.
Well, we can. Oh, let's test.
Just bear with me. Just type.
I know. Hold on. Hold on. I got it.
Yeah. Yeah. Except we were going to do it as a path, so we don't.
Let's try both. We can try them both. So for here, you can apply it there. Then we can see.
So you're getting your number now.
Yeah, but it's interesting. I got the number on the log, not to the oh, because it wasn't this text. Yeah, if I wanted to place it in TBX, yeah. So if I'm here and I'm saying go get the dictionary from TBX config, and if I go C.
But the thing is, you've done the right thing here because you've done the test. You've done the test in a different note
Yeah.
to the one that it's stored in. So you've now proved that the extra bit you put in saying TBX config works. So it said, don't use the information from this note, get the information from another note, and you've done that. So that's a tick. So now you know that if you put a C in, you get a 3 out. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to go back to
can I pause you here though? We don't have, I think we need to reverse the dictionary because we have numbers, not letters. So we actually want to look up a 1 and get an A back.
Okay, in which case you might need to put the keys in quotes, but you can try it. Let's just try it without.
Right. So right, because we have numbers coming from our lists.
Yeah.
Okay. Now if we were to do this and I say now I get 2. So I'd expect to get B. There we go.
Okay, there you go. Right. Okay. So so you now know that in the loop, you know that if you basically say
so basically you want to do a dictionary lookup in here now.
Yeah, so if you copy that, go back to the other stamp. Go back to the stamp you had, the test stamp we had. Right. Copy everything off. Sorry, you keep moving the screen. Can we go back to the stamp?
I can just delete what we need.
Sorry, it's just, do understand that I'm trying to run off your screen. And if you move it, I can't follow. Okay, so it's easier if I tell you what if you're happy with that, because otherwise it gets a bit confusing. Right. So you don't want the text equals.
Right.
So what you're going to do is you're going to say, so copy all the text to that line and cut it. In fact, you did well. That's all right. We'll take the semicolon out later. Right. Where you're going to put that is where you've currently got v count on the next line, because v string equals.
Right here. Or why wouldn't you just put it?
No. Stop. You got the wrong selection there. You want v count. You want plus equals v count.
Right here.
No. On the line below where you took the text out. You've got v string plus equals and replace v count with the text that you just cut.
Yeah, see, I was just saying that right there. You're saying
it's that. Sorry, it's just you had the wrong text selected there. So now paste. Yep. Okay, remove the semicolon because that'll end the line otherwise. And where you've got the quotes 2, you want to remove the quotes and the 2 and put v count, v, c, and t in without the quotes, because it's a variable. Okay, so what we're saying is I want the string to be the value. I want whatever TBX config has for the value of v count at the moment, and then all the other stuff which you know works because you've already tested it. Okay.
Okay, so now if I go and apply that to here, what our expectation would be, we would get a, let's do line breaks, make it easier. We're going to get a letter designated list in log, which we do. What ABCD?
Yep, there you go. So obviously, and if you, I mean, the thing is, if say you knew you were going to go up to 40, once you got to 26, you could go to AA, for instance, if you so needed to. But that's one way to do that. You could, if you want, you could have wrapped that into a function as well, because one of the things you probably will want to do as you go ahead, and was sort of implicit in what you were saying earlier, is that really what you want is something where you can basically make a call from a stamp that says, go get this stuff and give it to me in the following format, and you'll pass it in some variables. So you can wrap that up, but you now have all the moving parts. Now, if you had wanted to have, say, Roman numerals here, well, what we could have done is we could have used v count dot format quotes x. I think it is the, I think that's the one for Roman numerals.
Well, why don't we try that? Let's say I wanted the option to have no Roman numerals. What would we do?
So where you've got, do you want to make a new stamp? Copy, what I would do so you don't lose your stamp. No, right. Okay. Okay. Paste that into your new one. Yeah. Okay. Right. Now, where you have got my dictionary TBX config, you want to get rid of that because we're not using the lookup list anymore. You will need the v count though, because you're going to do something with that. So you want v count, vcnt, dot format, open parenthesis, quotes. Yeah. Now, close quotes. I can't remember it's a capital X or well, you can try that. It's either a lowercase x or a capital X, or it may be it gives you a lowercase or uppercase. Right. Okay. Put a capital X in the format box, in the format string. And see what the log gives us.
There you go.
There you go.
So now if we wanted to variabilize this.
Let's just go one stage further. Let's say that's fine, but I didn't want uppercase Roman letters. I wanted lowercase ones. After the format X, put a period, dot lowercase.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Okay, and then
that works because in fact all the Roman numerals are using letters, so we can play the. So you get by default you get uppercase if you want lowercase because it's actually although it looks like it's in a sense Roman numbers, it's actually letters made up of letters, and we know what to do if we want a lowercase or an uppercase version of a letter. So that's another variation you've just
right. And then we could create a Boolean that says if the Boolean is yes, no, or we could create an option like, so which kind of, because if I wanted to put this all into one stamp and have it triggered based on, so I don't have to like remember which stamp I'm doing.
Well,
I could actually
okay, so here's the next question to ask yourself. What you're going to have to inform the code of what you want because it doesn't know which sort. So the question is, where is it going to do that? You probably don't want to be editing in the code because what always happens when we do that is, lo and behold, we make a slip. So maybe what you want is you want to actually to have those as a displayed attribute somewhere. So that,
let's say you had
so that when you run the stamp, it goes and looks at what you've told it to. So you could have a couple of attributes here, one for the suffix, one for the prefix, one for the and the other thing you can do is you can say, let's say you've got, well, we've already used 3 types of numbering. Well, you can have a list. You could have a sort of list somewhere, and or you could either give it explicitly a sort of a bit of text that says what sort of numbering you want, and then you can have a function that goes away and basically gets the right bit of code. So in other words, where you have something like v count format x lowercase, you'd actually have a function call.
So when I'm experimenting with this, let's see, create a couple of sets. So just to pre-populate these. So let's say in type, we have the different types are we have alpha, number, Roman. Right, so those are the 3 types of numbering methods we might have, and the suffix can be a period or a parenthesis.
But you're basically writing your assumptions into a value box. In the value, you want the value you want to use.
I know, no.
These lists want to go in your readme section.
I'm ahead of you. You're not following me, right? So what I'm doing is I'm in my TBX config file. I'm essentially, rather than using the default functionality here, I'm populating the TBX config file with the different types of options I might want. So that way, when I'm now here in the note here, and I type, suffix, or end, all I need to do here is I can select which one do I want, alpha, number, Roman.
Right.
So my idea here is if I type alpha, I can now have the stamp says, if it's alpha, then give me a numbered list. If it's
Well, what you can also do is, yes, I would have used suggested values for that, because then you don't have to use them until you need to use them. They're always available in the drop-down list, but they're not actually saved values. But it should automatically.
and let me tell you why I don't do that personally.
Right.
Because I have multiple Tinderbox files and I want to have ultimate flexibility with this.
Okay, fair enough. Yep.
So, and so for those that are listening, if I'm creating a new Tinderbox file, I'm going to copy this note to my TB. So I put all of my configuration elements like this rather than in the attribute values, which forces me to remember them. So if I were to copy a new Tinderbox file, I can paste in the TBX config note. These attributes don't exist in the note. So now I'm going to go ahead and have Tinderbox create them. And I'll create them as sets. Okay. So now I've got Tinderbox having created those for them. And there's probably faster ways to do this. Now I delete it. Now that that new note actually has that, I can go back to this new note. Oops. Sorry, my computer's just acting slow.
Yeah, and the thing that we're going over here is, so in fact, the method you're using for a perfectly good reason of portability is the way you used to have to make suggested values. So if you wanted the drop-down list in displayed attributes to magically have values for you, the trick used to be that you go and make a note that already had all those values. So that because the list, what the list does when you click it is it looks across the document, or it keeps track of all the discrete values in use for that attribute in the document at the time. And that can be very large. But I
personally do that for portability's sake.
Yeah. And what the suggested method does is actually that's on the inspector. There isn't a suggested because so now you can see for attribute n there is a suggested box, and what you can do is you can put a list, so basically string values with a semicolon in between, into that box, and that does the same as is being done in the TBX config note.
Correct, but it doesn't necessarily help with the portability.
No, but I'm not explaining that. I'm explaining why you would use this. That's what it's there for.
Correct.
But you're not using it for the explicit reason that you actually want it to be manifest, because you want it to be portable as a note.
Correct.
So that's solving a different problem. Yep.
Okay. So now we have this. So now if we wanted to, and I could say my end's going to be that. So now we could play with the stamp and have Tinderbox go and grab those values from the note. And so what we could do this, and we could say just basically suffix would be the value for suffix.
Yep.
And we could get the value for end. And we need, and then what we now need is the type.
Well, just try that, so we don't get ahead of ourselves. Just try that.
Just to make sure it works. So if we do that, so what we're expecting with this code is we're going to get Roman numerals, and we're currently, our test is period, so we can just test this. Let's say we don't want the parenthesis or the period. What we want is the parenthesis. So now when we apply that to the note, we now have parentheses. And the line, that's interesting, the line break wasn't working.
It's being passed as a literal
it's
value.
Being passed as a literal string is not as a line break. So that's interesting. So maybe we can't do that.
Hold on a second. Let's you go back to. Okay.
All right. Well, we can play with that one later.
Yeah.
Let's just put this back in now.
I mean, this is a good example where this might appear. It might appear that the sort of the code's doing something wrong, but one of the things it has to do all the time is it actually has to sort of guess our intent, and there's nothing to tell it actually really that when we put a \n, that what we were really trying to do is to, if we only could, type a line break character, as opposed to just the literal characters \n.
Okay. Now this is interesting. It's not giving me the space. So if I want, if you look here, I want a space in between the word and that. So if I do suffix plus a space.
Right. So what's happening? Right. So another good lesson here is what you need to, so this is another thing where Tinderbox is saying, oh, look, I've got a random space here. So I'm going to trim that because clearly you want that. So in the case of things like spaces, I would actually put that literally into the loop.
Right here.
If you make the suffix whatever it is and then put that in there, I think you'll find that'll work.
Yep, there you go.
And that's a good example where sometimes, and but both examples here show where it can be, although you think you're being explicit in what you're saying, there's still enough ambiguity left behind the curtain for you to get a result you didn't quite want. And I don't know if there are ways around that. Certainly, adding line breaks and adding spaces sometimes just takes a little trial and error to get in the right place. I say trial and error. I mean, in the sense that essentially giving some code that isn't ambiguous to the process at the other end. But
so now we want a variable for this. So let's say we want a variable called string vCount type. And that's going to equal type. Right? So if vCount type is Roman, then I want this. So
no, you don't want the suffix you have regardless.
I don't want the suffix. I was just highlighting. So if I want if vCount type equals Roman, then give me that. Right? And this would be vCount type. And then if vCount type is alpha, I want this. Paste, yeah.
Right. Hold on a second. That your syntax doesn't make sense though, because you're saying condition equals
so
something.
Then we say you're right. It's syntax. So vCount type is type.
Yep.
If vCount type is Roman or alpha, and then this. Oh, so I need a new variable here.
Yep.
We'll call it variable type just for we're doing fast. We'll go variable string v type. And then we would say if v type, that's what I was doing wrong.
Yep.
V type equals right.
I mean, you probably can. You just for matter of note, what you're doing is fine. You can probably get away without the curly brackets if you're doing a single line because there's no ambiguity for the for the code. But I think it's helpful for most people because even though you're doing it all on one line, the curly brackets is basically saying this is the stuff to do if the condition that I've set is correct, and then that sort of syntax is easy to unpick.
So now what we're saying, if it's Roman, then pass the code this. If it's alpha, then pass the code that. So where are we actually at? So for alpha, I'm going to expect this list to turn to letters. So if we go like that, and I didn't get my letters. Because I know why. Because this should be in quotes. And I don't want that. There you go. I want that to be passed. And because there's a quote in there, I actually want to have. So what we're doing here is we're doing the apostrophe is because there's quotes actually in the string.
Yeah, and then you want where you've got V type, you probably want, well, you can try. I think what you'll need is eval V type because you've stored some code as a string, and you're going to read it back as a string. So Tinderbox doesn't necessarily know that actually what you want that string is action code.
So I got that. So I'm going to eval that.
No, not there. Okay. Yeah, there you are. Yeah, inside the loop. So you want to take that string, evaluate it as if it was code, and take what the result is, which should, lo and behold, give you that.
So now if we go back up here and we want to change this to Roman, and we get rid of the alpha. Now when we do that, we should get Roman numerals. There you go.
And you can, of course, you can
and then how do we
uppercase Roman, lowercase Roman. So you basically got yourself a Swiss Army thing, and you could, if you want to, you could wrap some of that up in a function out of the way, also to make the parts of it more reusable. But that's not a requirement. That's really more down to individual taste and how you like to square things away. But you've now got you've now basically got all the moving parts you need, and you can see how for different types you might need a different solution. So we used a dictionary to get a letter from a number. A letter from a number. Whereas for something like Roman numerals, there's a built-in thing, and we could, but it wouldn't make sense here. But you could have the ordinal, so it would say first, second, third, fourth, while we're talking about the number formatting, things like the ordinal are locale dependent. So if you had French locale on your computer, you'd get the shortening for premier, deuxième, troisième, instead of first, second, third. So or in German or Turkish or whatever. So there's some more little affordances that are built in for you there. Or if you're one of the people, we do have some in the community who because of what they study, they work in one language with their computer set in a locale for a different one, studying something in yet another language, and then things can get a bit fun. But you just got to work out where you need to set the right locale, or you might want to sort of
okay. Now the one thing we haven't solved was the end part. So if I wanted to, and that didn't, I tried to do the eval the end, and when I did that, it just stuck in the N in there. So how do we actually get the line break?
What you might be able to do is if you put an extra line break in, put \\n.
Okay.
And then evaluate it. I know this sounds counterintuitive, but let's see if that works. And if it does.
No,
it didn't. Okay, right. I think because it's the only thing in there, I suspect what you're hitting is some well-intentioned tidying up code, exactly the same sort of thing as happens with blank spaces. So Tinderbox will tend to will tend to trim off the space because what it's working on the assumption is that an attribute value, or historically it would have just been a value, it might have been dog or orange or something. And in that context, why would you want a space on the front or the back? Well, you normally wouldn't. It would only be there because you either fat finger the typing, or you copied it from somewhere and some spaces came along for free. So sometimes you actually need to put some of these, as it were, spaces in literally.
Yeah.
I don't think, I'm not aware of there isn't a sort of, because \n is already a sort of shorthand for a line break.
So I don't think what we can do then here is do the same thing here.
You might be able to. I'm trying to remember if we can use the character code.
If end, let's just try it. So if we were to copy here, and I would say if end equals line break. Then B end equals, it's not anymore. Is that going to work? Let's see. Yeah, that worked. So you pass it through. So then likewise, if we wanted to do that again, we could say if end equals comma, then I want it to give me a comma space. If we do that. All right. Now we have comma space, right? So that's how to address that. Okay, so that was fun. Anybody have any thoughts, comments, questions, observations, curiosities about what we just discussed there? Want us to review anything, or did it all make sense? Or we just absolutely put everyone to sleep, Mark? What do you think? Okay. Let me go ahead and hit pause, and let's pause here for the community since we just kind of go through this. So, I mean, Bruce, how are you doing? What are your thoughts on what we've been talking about, or you've gone off to get a cup of coffee? How about Mary? What do you think?
No, I'm here. I'm here. I've been having wonky internet, so I've been keeping it low. Well, it's fascinating. I mean, I kept thinking to myself, all right, so I would take this, pop it into Google Docs, do it in 3 seconds, and then copy the text back, but that's me. So this is fascinating to watch. It's once again, it's a solar eclipse for me. And but it's interesting to see. And and actually half of it, the two of you could charge because in addition to getting it done, the interaction and chemistry between the two of you getting this done is like a show on its own.
Yeah, you should watch it when it happens at like 3 o'clock in the morning my time and 11 his. It's
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, something your point is well made, Bruce, and it because in one of the things you're pointing out, there's always more than one way to do this, and often, depending on what the workflow is, you're absolutely right. You can stick it in some tool and do this and do automatic numbering. The point is, of course, in Michael's context, is not only is this going to be happening, but this is going to be happening in a whole stream of other stuff. So in that case, you'd have to stop, get the stuff put in. So there's no right or wrong to it. These things are all make sense in the larger context of how you'll use them. So when you look at them in microcosm, it seems okay, that's fine, but it's just doing something I know how to do already. Well, yes, it is, but it's doing it in an automated way and a reconfigurable way that doesn't require you to do anything once it's set up. And
okay, and on that note, so Bruce came a little bit late to the call, so let me reshare the screen, and let's now put this into the practical example. Right? So we just played around in a test file to kind of generally get the function or the function stamp action code working. And now let's look at the practical example. So the practical example is I'm building a rate card of a bunch of services that I want to sell. And within those services, I have deliverables for each of the different services that I want to offer. And so that when I turn around and I want to provide a proposal to somebody, the deliverables for those services can be inserted into the text at the end of the note. And again, there'll be a bunch of little refinements that I'm going to want to do with that methodology, but let's go ahead and take our and let's go through the process. I already have a tbx config file in this note, but let's go ahead and paste this thing in here so that we can automatically generate our new attributes. Nope, sorry, let me do it here. Yeah, I'm going to pull this off the screen real quick because I don't want to show some of this stuff. That's fine. All right. So I'm going to go here, and I already have that TBX config file down here. So I'm just going to go ahead and add this new one here like we were doing before.
I just, for now, to save yourself some trip, I give it a new name.
I will. I'm just getting this stuff added in.
Well,
first.
or just number on the end or something. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't create them. So let me do it again. All right. So they're up. So I've got this. I got to create these two new attributes. So let's go ahead and do that. It's happening off screen right there. So we'll go ahead and create those, and we're going to make them as sets. All right. So I've got those attributes now created. And then if I wanted to paste it back in, I could. So I can now get the values pre-populated in there. Come on. All right, so now, and we decided we're not going to do, we're going to do line break and comma as our strategy. And then I can delete these old ones like this. I'll do my own personal refinements later, but we'll call it TBX config 2 for now. We'll go back to rate card. And so now we have, and I want to also copy the stamp over that we've created. And this is the stamp I want. Or I can just do it from here too. So now if I go back here, I go to my stamps, got a new stamp, and this is to produce list.
Yeah. And don't forget to rename TBX config in the stamp to TBX config 2.
Produce a deliverable list. Okay. And so, and then the other thing we want to do is, where's TBX config? Here.
If vcount equals alpha.
Yeah, there.
Oh, I just noticed one other little wrinkle. It's where you've got your if conditions. Those are supposed to be equality tests, so it should be double equals.
Oh yeah, you're absolutely right.
They work because way back when action code and export code were much simpler, Mark was trying to make it work along the lines of something like AppleScript, where you just wrote what you meant. And as we know, these things are lovely in principle, but human language is actually remarkably difficult to do like that. It's full of ambiguity. So the general convention is that if you're doing effectively a query, which is what you're doing inside an if statement, then use query language. And when you want to test the equality of two things, use two equal signs, or exclamation point equals if you're doing a not equals equality test. You will also need to
and in this context, I want to I'm going to get everything from TBX config. Right. So this is an example of just modifying it, because I'm not going to want to do this on a per note basis. I'm going to want to do it from my config file for now.
And then at the moment, in the current thing, you're setting the text into the log. So what you now want to be saying, you're going to say $text plus equals, and you only get probably whether you want one or two line breaks up to you, and then the output of all the other stuff you've done there.
Okay, actually, you know what? I changed my mind. I actually do want it on here. So if I go back to this note and I pop down to my prototypes and I go to my inventory and I want to add in, what is it, suffix and in this case, I'm now going to create a new attribute because I use type for something else in my normal files. So I'll create a type list, which I'm now going to need to create a set. So I'm now creating a new type list, and I'll clean this up later, but for now I'll put type list in here. And my type lists are that. And that lets me pre-populate those. So now if I go back to my rate card, I now have to go here. And
Don't forget in the stamp as well. So about 2 lines up from where you are at the moment, you've got vcount type equals type, and you want that to be type list. Yeah, there you go.
And I want to populate these. So the suffix in this case is going to be the period. And the end is going to be the line break for fun. And the type will be Roman. Why not? Okay, so those are the values that I want for this particular inventory item. And then we need to change this, and we're going to say not a log. We'll say text equals plus equals text plus, and to your point, let's put in a line break for now.
Yep.
All right. So if I do that, this should. There you go. And so now I've just added the deliverables in my list. Now, the other thing that I'm going to want to, and again, what it did is it plus equal the text. So I don't want to do that. I want to add, I want the text to be a variable, maybe.
I was going to say you probably do, because if you want to do a do-over, then
See,
you're
text.
going to hit this sort of problem. Yeah, so the easiest thing is that as long as the starting text is going to be a short string like you've got at the moment, you might as well have that as another value that you can pull. You probably want that as a displayed attribute so you can actually read it and edit it.
Right.
And that just means that when you run your stamp, your function, whatever, it'll just.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, so let's just use my string for now. So if I went like this and I were to copy this text into here, my string. Okay, and then we go here and I say v text equals my string. I'm on. Okay, so now if I apply that to this note, oh yeah, because I don't want the plus equals. There you go. And now we have that. Now, we all know I use prefixes for my notes. So this is standing for deliverable. Clearly, I wouldn't want that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and show you another little trick I've developed for myself. So if we go to here and I go to my libraries, my stamps, and so many of my notes, I'm going to say I have an on visit inventory. Okay, so I've to make the automation of my larger files that have like 10,000 notes. I don't want a bunch of rules and edicts running on all of my notes. And in fact, I really only want those notes to update when I actually go visit them or select them. I found this a method that's been super helpful for optimizing my files. And now if I go to my short title code and paste this code in here. So this is basically calling a function that says, if my v short title equals the function of short title, then if the short title does not equal v short title, then change the value. And so what this function does is this function is a simple function for going through and stripping out the, do I not have v short title in this file? I don't. Let me get it. I've been building myself up a new file, so I haven't necessarily copied everything over yet. So if I go down here to my other file, I've got to get v short title from a different file. Let me get it. Should be here.
And this is actually a good example of where, and when earlier I'd said, well, you could just sort of back some of this off into a function. Well, here's a very good case of, in a sense, doing just that. So
right.
Rather than, I mean, you literally could, in the stamp that we were using, just say for the child name, each time you get it, you just say, well, I just want everything after the first 6 characters or whatever.
Right.
But in fact, you have something that you've got something here now that takes care of that.
So my convention is, basically start at the beginning of the line and grab everything up to the first hyphen. And that is the prefix, a hyphen and a space. And so that's the so it's basically go to the first line, grab all of the text, the space explanation point up to the hyphen and a space. And that's the pattern I use for my prefixes. And then by having this now Vite note inventory, I'm saying basically now go grab and create a short title note for that note. And then what I want to do is to make that work. Oops, come on, slow down. To make that work.
Michael, you may know this. On visit is typed differently than any of the others.
No, because it's a typo. I didn't know that because I just typed.
No, I didn't know if that would affect the code.
Would absolutely affect the code. Because as we all know, I can be spelling challenged. That is a known
It
issue.
wasn't
So on visit the P inventory. So now I go back to my prototype. And just to show you that all the short title element here. Okay, so the short time, just so we can visually see it, I'll remove that later after the call. And then I'm going to go, and we don't have for the on visit attribute. I'm going to open up my inspector just a second. Where to go? Okay, so in the inspector, when you go to the Death Star, a lot of the functions, action code variables are here. We don't actually have an on visit tab. So like this action here is the on add functionality, and we don't have that a tab here for on visit. So what you can do is you go to the quick stamp, you select on visit. And so what I'm essentially saying is stamp. So what I'm telling Tinderbox with this code is saying, when I visit a note, when I touch the note, trigger the stamp on visit and run that action code, as opposed to running the action code in the rules and the edicts. And what I realized, and why I've kind of switched to the on visit methodology, was when I had 10 to 12,000 notes in a file, even though the triggers I was using before, which you all might have heard before, I had is dormant or strategy, I ended up just having 10,000 booleans that were always false. And I found that even just checking those 10,000 booleans every minute was slowing it down. So by removing even the Boolean checks out of the edicts and attributes, my files have gotten much faster. So now, now that we've set that on visit stamp, so when I'm going to go and, oh, I didn't paste it in. I didn't hit apply. Okay, so I'm going to hit apply. So now that the P inventory now has its on visit stamp, if I now go to my inventory items, rate card here, and I'm now going to click away, you'll see that it automatically created my on visit. And now you'll see that I'm still getting the devs here. So we go back to this stamp. And rather than collecting name, what I want to collect is short title. Now, if I do that, oh, and I have to get the I have to generate short titles for each one of these. I have to do. Oh, and that's right. I have to do the what's my password for this? I don't want to just do it for the deliverables. I've got to do that same action. So I got to do all that over again, this time for
yeah, the deliverables for P
deliverables. Okay, copy that. Go to the P. Give me a second to think through this. Come on. Slow down. There we go. P deliverable. Go here. On visit. Stamp. All right, apply. Now if we go look at the deliverables, I can go ahead and by visiting them, that's triggering the stamp for every one of these. If you want to go, I can show you here. I can add the short. So you'll see here, by having now visited that note, that's told Tinderbox to trigger the stamp and to generate the note there. And so now if I apply that stamp, we now have the lists without the prefix in there.
I have a nitpicky question.
Yeah.
So as your Roman numerals increase in characters, 1 versus 3, the spacing becomes uneven. How do you address that?
I could, there's a number of ways if I wanted to address it. I could do a count on the number of numerals and then have it insert that number of spaces. You know, if I felt that I really wanted that. So if it was anything less than, so I could say, if the letter count was less than
Right.
3, then add 2 extra spaces. So that if and when I got to that point, I would do something like that.
It's actually slightly more complex here because you've got a proportionally spaced font. So
Right.
4 actually takes more space than 2, and they're both 2 characters. So it's a bit difficult, but that you unless you're trying to do it for every possible Roman number under the sun, but if you're doing it for a small number, you could probably at least for instance, you could have a lookup for the value string of the Roman number, and dependent on what it was, you might say choose 1, 2, or 3 padding characters.
Is there an ASCII code for what would be the equivalent of what I'm going to call a hard indent?
In what sense, hard indent?
So let's say that participation in 2 to 3 hours wrapped over 2 lines, and he then wanted that to left justify properly, so it's indented however many spaces.
No, because not really, because you're now stepping out into the styling, which is a whole different part. Because in the rich text like this, as it's done, that's done by the style rulers. But you.
So it's a limitation.
You do have it for quick lists, funnily enough, but that doesn't help you because we're not making quick lists. But you may recall something was added in version 10 is that if you use this method where I know Michael doesn't because he uses Markdown for other good reason, but if you, for instance, want to create a list in a Tinderbox note and you want to have either a bulleted list or a numbered list, if you type an asterisk, it will step your text in like a list. If the text of that item wraps, it will actually indent the wrapped lines a little.
Yeah, it will create a
controlled by
list.
2 attributes.
Well, and actually I can show you how I would implement that. So on that note, let's say I wanted to do that, exactly that. And because I write in Markdown, I'll just play with it right now. If I go ahead here and apply my Markdown stamp, print Markdown. So that's my Markdown stamp. So that's telling me that, and I changed it to pink because that's telling me that when this note renders, it's going to be Markdown. And so in this context, I want my list to be bullet. So I'm going to modify my stamp, and we're going to say here, if list is bullet, then what I want you to do is insert asterisk like that. And then I don't want a comma, so I want line breaks at the end. And I don't want a prefix. I want the prefix to be empty. And this should work. Let's go ahead and experiment, see what happens. So that should give, oh, I know why, because it should be a, if the bullet, the V type, so it should, oh, that should that, no, I shouldn't have to do that. Okay, why is that not working, Mark? Let me think why.
Well,
Oh, bullet wrong.
just stick it. Well, just stick a backslash in and see what happens out of
I
interest.
just did, and it didn't work.
Okay. I don't know. I think this again. This is the same point you had before. If you're trying to sort of do.
I know why. I'm missing. I'm in. Just a minute. Maybe let me just expand this out a little bit. If it's a bullet. So if it's a if count type. Oh, not count type. That's the problem. If type list. No, that should no. You're right. If count that should have been if count type is bullet. So if count type is so it's type list. So if count type list equals bullet, then I'm saying I want v type to equal.
Well, I'll tell you what. The one thing to do at this point is just put, I don't know, put 3 Z's in there or something and run it and check that it's detecting bullets. So you check that the problem is that it's not understanding the string you've created, rather than some other issue.
It's not understanding the string.
Okay, fine. So
I want that to be 0. If I do that, okay. Now let me put it back. Now bullet.
So an asterisk is
it doesn't like the asterisk.
Well, it's an asterisk is a regular expression special character. You've got a short string that consists of a regular expression special character and a string and a space. And if you recall, we said that one of the things that Tinderbox will try and do is sort of clear up things like trailing spaces, because in a sense, why would you want those? And my suspicion is that what's happening here is unintentionally you're tripping across. Now I don't know off the top of my head. I don't think there's a way that there certainly is an operator that you can use that says no, use this literally, because the problem is it's not that you can't say this is literally what I want to use. It's that you can't reach far enough into the sort of guts and things. So at this point, I don't want you to do any clever things associated with this.
Right.
Because you don't know where that happens. So I don't know. You might have to ask Mark, who I know is traveling at the moment.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'll play with that. But let's say that did work. Let's just pretend it worked. So if I were to then go like this, and if I were writing in Markdown, I don't know why is my computer so Zoom's just a UI hog. It really slows things down. All right, so if that did work, and because I was, come on. And if I was then going like that, so then if I were to then render that note, Tinderbox would turn it into a bulleted list for me. And then I've built in, then you'll see what's interesting, you see how my child notes are having here. So in my templates, I actually have another element. I said is no show. You'll see, so I built a bunch of controls into my template. So is no show child text title. So if I add that item in and I say, I don't want you, when you run my template, I actually don't want you to show the children. So now I get my bulleted list without the children. If I add that back in, the children are there. So and just so those that are watching, I can just show you where that's coming from. In my template, I have generated a strategy that says, if no show child title that is false, then do this, and then down in the children element of my template, I say, I've got a bunch of special other parameters I put in here as well. But at the bottom of this template, come on, and then we'll be done as soon as I show this. Come on, why is it so slow? Yeah, so you say if no show children is false, then run the template on the children. If it's true, then don't run the template on the children, and it doesn't add it to the list. So those are all like the little intricacies I pulled into my file management.
So the other thing you could do, just to round out Bruce's question, if you just chop to one of your not one of the tinderboxes you've got that's got all your markdown and everything, and just, in other words, just one that's more plain vanilla, and we can just show them how the bullet line wrapping works.
Oh yeah, so if I were to create a just a note here, test note. Okay. And if I were to say item 1, I'll actually do Lorem Ipsum. Like that. And in the new Tinderbox 10, Mark has added, you notice that this this text on the Tinderbox automatically, so if I had and I tab this in, how do you, yeah, you'll see that Tinderbox automatically dropped in extra spacing, and we talked about this last week at the last Tinderbox file. How do you do the indent again?
Well, just put a go back. Put an asterisk there. You right asterisk. Now tab that line in, and
and maybe I need to update it here. Huh?
I'm not sure quite what you may have done something weird with the when you were pasting with the style, but
you see here,
essentially
doing that for you.
Essentially, you can see you can have it so that the line below, because the what's perhaps not immediately apparent when you're looking at there, that without the indenting that was done, line 2 of each of those bullets would start under the asterisk. So what it's designed to do is that it does the nice indenting for you. Oh, I do. Sorry, if you just make the in the second one, make it two asterisks.
That was it. Yeah, you're right.
And you can use asterisks, or you can use hash signs. And if you're not using the markdown approach, a asterisk will turn out to be a bulleted item, and a hash or a pound sign will turn out to be a numbered item.
This might be just the rendering, but as I'm looking at these, the top one is aligned perfectly. The double asterisk a little off.
Yeah, it's a little off.
And the hashtag off on each of them.
Well, because they're different. Because in a sense,
okay, so
you're back to the same thing you're back to the bit like the Roman characters, and it's a proportionally spaced font. And in a sense, what the thing's trying to do is to give you some fairly rapid formatting. And I could see, one could easily spend a load of time just making that all sort of perfectly aligned, but to not really great effect for the effort you put in, because you're going to spend a lot of time.
So here
it's all working there.
Yeah, so it's working here, which is really all that matters.
Well, that said, of course, what you're looking at there is HTML rendering, so the whole styling is being done on a different system. But I take your point. I mean, there isn't a particularly easy way. If you always use numbered lists, you could adjust the I think it's called quick list hanging indent, which is that's the attribute that is, in fact. If you just, in the note you've got, if you just show quick list indent and
let me show you this real quick.
The attributes, and then you can fiddle with it.
So if I do more, well, remember, there's two. The goal is for the output. So you see here, it might not be as visually perfect here, but if I preview it, you see that it actually is looking pretty darn good.
Right, and then that's what I'm going to get on export as well.
Yes, that's what we're, because this has now been rendered as perfect HTML.
Okay, because that's what matters.
Right. So you're essentially doing the shorthand for telling Tinderbox, when you export this, turn this into a numbered list, turn this into a bulleted list.
I mean, I can absolutely say, for me, this is a godsend in ATBRF. I use a lot of lists, and the useful thing about it is, I'm less worried about the exact alignment, but it's just that it steps the bulleted, it steps the list off the left margin, because until this was done, if I just start at the beginning of the paragraph and I put an asterisk, and I could type all the text and it would wrap in right to the left under the asterisk and so on, which is fine. But just having it formatted like this, even in the basic text, is just useful because you can just see the flow of the items more easily. In terms of exact
and then the two new attributes that he added was this. So what you're saying, the quick list indent is saying indented in 24 pixels.
Well, yeah, if you add those as displayed attributes to the note you're playing with at the moment.
So this part's real. I know we're wrapping up, but this part's really useful to me because I've been writing some manuals and doing training, and I'm starting to get more and more into what Michael has described as reusable components, if you will. And I'm finding, and I'd like to be able to have it all in Tinderbox as, that's where I click off and choose what I want to then create my different, trainings, etc.
Yeah. Well, so Michael, if you just change the hanging indent, no, the quick list indent is the first one, so that'll step your lists in even further. So the hanging indent is how far the second and subsequent lines go. So you can see now he's set it to 0. You can see how the when the line wraps, it's wrapping, so it's right underneath the asterisk. The asterisk is inset because it's indenting 48 characters for each pixels, I think it is, for each level.
Right. And so and again, this is just a visual convenience for here. When I export it, it still is a good list. These attributes are just for helping manipulate the visuals in your text.
And so are there additional, because I haven't gotten into the quick list part, are there additional quick list commands I should be looking up?
No.
No, there is an article on quick lists. I'll just stick it in the chat.
Thank you.
So this just kind of helps you when you're writing in your text to give you that sense of like what's the structure going to look like when it exports.
So the quick lists have been around actually sort of forever, and the original purpose was it just made it very, in the same way that when you write a basic note and you take a basic HTML export, it takes every paragraph in the text and makes it an HTML paragraph. What this does is just say, no, I don't want I don't want this to be a I don't want this to be a normal paragraph. I want it to be part of a list or a bulleted list or a numbered list, and that was fine. The extra bit here is it's just using a little bit of visual styling to give you some feedback when you're writing, and you sort of know, oh right, yeah, I've definitely, I meant to create a list here, and yes, indeed, I have a list item, and this one is a nested list.
And what's interesting is that formatting is working well for asterisks, but it's not for the hashtags. So we might want to ping.
Yeah, we can take a look at that. To a certain extent, I suppose I don't know. I was going to say one probably indents, one nests numbered lists less often, but shouldn't look much different. But as I say, the main convenience of it is that it just shows you when you're writing in text that you're not in our body text paragraph.
Mm-hmm. And then since we are wrapping up, I will show you one other project I'm working on is building one's resume in Tinderbox. So I'm applying for this new teaching element, and so let me pull this off real quick, and I can show you here. I think, and I can demonstrate this next week if anybody's interested. But let me do like this. So I'm in the process of right now of getting all job history in, education in, skills in, and then the next step this afternoon is I'll be building the template for this, so that one can now manage and coordinate their resume in Tinderbox, and keep elements of all of their history. And so then I'm thinking about too, like, how do I want to list the different clients that I advise? What are the different awards that one might do? And so hopefully by next weekend, we'll actually have a Tinderbox resume template.
And just one other quick comment, thing back to Bruce's earlier comment about the sort of the Mutt and Jeff show, the two of us, working is.
I did not say Mutt and Jeff.
No, but I know, but I know what I mean. It's actually quite useful. It's sort of difficult, like with this, and I'm sure we put more stuff in the Zoom. I know Michael's machine is struggling at the moment, but it's often a good idea actually if you're getting someone to help you with something, is actually let them drive the cursor, because normally you can share that. Because we're all the same. The thing is that you forget, if you're driving it and someone else is giving you instructions, that what they're seeing, there's a sort of disconnect, because they're expecting to see the cursor move as they instruct, and you're jumping ahead, or you see something, you move the cursor to fix the thing absolutely naturally, and now the person who's following you, well, oh no, that's the wrong line. So it's difficult. There's always difficulty in a sort of big group anyway, but just a thing to bear in mind. So if you have a system that allows that, it's often useful, because it's easily forgotten, because we're used to sharing the screen, but not necessarily allowing somebody else to drive the cursor. But most of these sort of systems, I think, will allow you to do that.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that's funny too is, and as was demonstrated in today's call, was we're both thinking simultaneously. So you're 2 steps ahead of me, and then sometimes I'll jump ahead of you. And then you have this back and forth of like, well, no, this is what I'm thinking. Or like that whole point of data portability. I don't want to use suggested because of the portability of between files. And this is how I do my Tinderbox file. But you're not necessarily reading my mind while I'm trying to implement another thing.
It's a live lesson in unsurfaced assumptions.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also just want to comment as we're wrapping up that the characters in my mind were called Click and Clack, the Tappet brothers from NPR, who solved impossible car-related repairs. They both passed now, unfortunately, but for a couple of decades or more, you can find their old shows. And so
those guys were hysterical.
I don't want to negate or minimize the expertise involved.
Yeah, I remember I was watching one of their shows one time, and the guy called up, and the woman calls in. She says, "My car is starting to sound like my grandmother's knees," and like clicks like, "Oh, the bushings and blah 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 are going wrong. Take them in and get your bushings fixed, and you'll be good." That's how well these guys knew the cars.
Yeah, they were great.
Yeah.
Thank you both.
Well, that was fun, everyone. Thank you very much. I appreciate working through my direct and immediate challenge. That was good. Really appreciate it, and we'll see you next week. Next week we can do resume writing in Tinderbox if we look at another theme. Okay, awesome. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Ciao.